Hello and welcome back to Command Value 1. We've been gone for a smidge. Last time we were here, we had played a batch of version 2 games over at the GordoCon at the end of 2022. Since then, we've come back and met back up at Adepticon and had ourselves a round of old beta games. And after those two experiences, we've really come to a point where we're back looking at this game similar to a way we used to look at it when we were young and dumb and in love with it. So we've gotten back together. I'm joined here tonight with Don. Don, say hello.
Oh.
Jordan.
Hey.
Kirill.
Hi.
And last but not least, he who should not be named, the Overlord Shiva.
Hey, everybody.
It's our only jelly player. Gotta give him some respect, I suppose. So anyways, we've all come back together and are digging back into Dropzone. We played several games at Jordan's house pre-Adepticon. We had the Swedish Giant back in States with us. He was playing some Sheltari. We probably cranked out combined at least a dozen games. Is that an exaggeration?
Yeah,
we played 3 or 4 games over 3 days or so.
Plus in the convention itself.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there for that. But I think collectively we found we really did love that game, and that specifically that version that we had helped work on as long as we did. And back at Gen Con of 2022, Sky over at Go for Games, who is the U.S. distributor for TT Combat, had let us know that Dave was coming back to take over rule writing for Dropzone, and that he was going to be looking at play data from player groups across the world on version 1, on beta, on version 2, and just kind of compiling thoughts and feelings about what does and doesn't work about the game. And then he was going to do some re-upping on the rules. It could be anywhere just from rules update to a version update. I've seen people on Discord say version 3. I've heard the term just rule update. So it's kind of up in the air on what the actual reality of that is. And we have no official capacity in it. But what we have decided is that we weren't done with what we were working on with that rule set. So we've kind of dissected it, taken it apart, and started digging into what we did and didn't like, and started to build a community version of the rules. And I say community version, that means like our community here, like our local play group. This is the game that we want to play. But obviously, if there's interest and other people want to check it out, we're going to be happy to share that here down the line. So tonight, what we're going to do is we've all kind of gathered together to look at that rule set and specifically dig into the United Colonies of Mankind and run through the units as they currently are in an overall balanced pass for us, including bringing in a lot of the units that were added in version 2 and kind of trying to tweak them around in what we think they should look like for this version of the game. Some of them need a lot of help. Some of them are fine. But we thought it might be interesting and informative to you people as listeners here to kind of hear how we look at the game and how we view the game and how we break down and attempt to balance it in a way that makes it more playable. So with that said, guys, are we ready to jump in and break some games?
Do it.
All right. So the UCM has, according to Kirill's documentation here, 35 total units. Let's start with our standards, the Saber and the Katana. And both of these seemed pretty tight as they were, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, having played 2 games with all core units just this prior weekend, I would say, I didn't play with all the units, but I played enough with them. I would say they were left in a pretty good spot.
And last time I played them, I used UCM, and I had a brick of sabers. I was very happy with the way they performed. I would agree that I don't think there's anything wrong with them, price or play wise.
Now that they always, felt like the exact right thing to bust my Scourge vehicles. So yeah, no, I think they always performed admirably.
I am going to be the lone voice here, where I always thought that they had poor survivability for a main battle tank, but that's my own bias from my own experience in life. For what they are, which is a one-man, one-gun tracked vehicle, they work.
Yeah, I was looking at them in comparison to PHR Ares walkers as the main unit, and that was one of the conversations that propped up. Is I actually felt like sabers were more survivable at armor 10 and 1 DP than a foe or an Ares was at armor 9 and 2 DP. Because my stuff just seemed to get picked off the board, and there's less of it, and being walkers, it's in an elevated position. The Sabres got a lot going for it. I think part of the issue that comes with Sabres is I think a lot of them just get thrown out in the open and don't take advantage of that articulated rule. Jordan?
Part of this too is as the game is, it's so relative to who's fighting who, but also with the a lot of the newer units. I don't know if you want to call it power creep, but somewhat it is. But I think it's more because overall, like unit to unit, I don't know that a lot of them are crazy out of balance, but the availability and easeability for most units to have a fair amount of energy 11 shots does kind of affect things like survivability wise.
Mm-hmm.
Where we all come from a place where we played the game fairly early, and outside of the Scourge, having a ton of stuff above energy 10 was a luxury. And it was more the exception than kind of a slightly inconvenient choice to put in, but still heavily in everyone's list.
PHR and Scourge did have a lot of E11 basic units, but it was also tempered by price and armor.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is really kind of going off subject. I think we'll get there, but list building choices or restrictions thereof. Whereas, each faction used to be a lot more bound to what units could be taken in what group and in how many. And even through the beta and then version 2, players were a lot more free to take the models that they wanted rather than to have to take a certain set. And it did, I think, kind of affect the balance of who could field what, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm following you a bit. We don't have that issue so much here because we are still looking at the beta rules. So the unit selection is kind of dialed back, and especially, as a PHR player, that flexibility to take the walker bricks, the mixed bricks, or for the Shaltari to do that's still relevant in this version. So, but yeah, I know what you're saying with 2 kind of being a little more restrictive to take this specific block of units.
Well, no, even the beta unified who could take what in what group, and that did affect things.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm following you. Not having custom force org charts for each unit or for each army.
Correct.
That would be something nice to have back, but yeah,
like it made sense kind of for the PHR because they had a lot more quote unquote heavy units, but they also had more heavy slots in different groups than say the other guys. So
listen, Josh, if you think we should go back to individual faction force org charts, I'll join you in that battle cry.
I think I think it could be fun, especially when you can differentiate between like the 3 resistance factions.
There are only 2 resistance factions. The resistance
you
are a
got
binary faction.
No, you got like the Callium, Feral, and random resistance.
So if you want to go fluff factions, there is even in the early books, it basically said there's not one allied unified group and there's not one unified feral group. And they said, if you want fluff wise for your army to be allied with the UCM, it can be, even though you want to use feral forces only and use those feral cards. It wasn't a restrictive, you are this or that. This is the type of army you're building, but it very much
thematically, all the armies were like that. I mean, you had Scourge and their different overlords. You had Shaltari, different tribes. You had different task force for the PHR. So I mean, everyone had that thematic flexibility. That's why we don't have to paint our army all ultramarine blue or something.
So yeah, I mean, the Callium pieces got brought in post V2. So technically, there's only one at that point because there's no separate rules for sub factions in version 2.
Right.
But we are going to retain sub faction rules in this, correct? We are sticking with feral and allied options.
That was one of the things that drew me to the faction the most.
And I guess we keep diverging here. We're supposed to be talking about UCM. But that's how boring UCM is.
I think the katana and everything is the exact same as what it is now, isn't it?
The katana is rocking armor 9, but it's 2 energy 9 shots. And it has a smoke launcher rule, but it also costs 2 points more than the saber. Now, granted, volume of fire is I think probably worth the 2 extra points, giving you 2 energy 9 accuracy 2 shots versus 1 energy 10 accuracy 2 shot is probably worth the 2 points in addition to the smoke launchers.
And the speed.
Do you agree with that?
2 extra inches.
Yeah, it is 2 inches faster. You're right.
So even if everything else was the same, like math wise, because your max damage output has a higher possibility, I guess. You can chart it out, but it's arguably that it's not any worse against armor 10, and then as armor values go lower, the saber gets better than the katana very, very quickly. Even if it had the same amount of movement. Capping out at armor 10, or if we're using V2, armor 15.
Saber also has the articulated, so that can be a big swing defensively.
Well, katanas are always usually not really going after armored vehicles. They're more for taking out light stuff and also putting a lot of fire into buildings.
But mathematically, they're just as good at taking out armor 10 as the saber, because they got 2 1 in 6 chances versus 1 1 in 3 chance. Like, it's mathematically the same.
Light tanks in the real world would not have a weapon capable of taking on a main battle tank. So at one point we talked about lowering the strength of weapons, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to differentiate the light tank from the main battle tank, where we reduce the strength of that gun.
Yeah, I mean, we could entertain dropping it to energy 8 and seeing how that plays out.
I guess my concern when we start doing that is, where does that place the katana as a usable unit? Does a brick of 6 katanas at E8 have enough firepower to affect the game? Because there's, and I think I've used this term before. We have the plausibility and the playability of the units that kind of have to get balanced in there. And I don't know if it's armor creep or power creep in general or where, but Jordan and I think were discussing last weekend that the difference between Energy 9 and Energy 10 is a lot more than just one.
Yeah, I mean, we can also look at it from changing accuracy to a 3+ to affect that would change the outcome of some of the shooting.
It might also be worth discussing how we standardize weapon systems across the board. Because we have machine guns that do E3, we have machine guns that do E4. So to that point, it might be something to kind of go through all the units and be like, okay, machine guns are going to do E4 because they're designed for spraying and praying. Unless you start talking about adding like suppression rules and then you're over tokening and convoluting the game and it all gets kind of messy.
Right, but they've also came in with like anytime that the machine gun was a different whatever stat, he had a different naming family to it.
Right. So there's a couple of other UCM standards nowadays, and these we've not touched because these are V2 version or V2 units. We have the Polecat and the Jackal. So the Polecat buggy and the Jackal LAV. Let's start with the Polecat. We're looking at armor 7, move 9, active countermeasures 1 DP, 25 point standard, comes in groups of 2 to 4. It comes with an aggressor cannon, which is energy 7, shot 3, accuracy 3, range fire 18, range counter 18, and shape charge. Or it may choose to swap its aggressor cannon at no additional charge to twin Nemesis machine guns, which are E4, shot 6, 3+, range fire 16, range counter 8. They ignore cover, and it has focus 1. So interesting enough, focus 1 was something that I brought up for machine guns in general. We were talking about that a couple weeks back. I mentioned maybe to make machine guns, all these machine guns on all these units a little more useful is to possibly give them focus 1, so if you do get some decent hits, you might be able to put a damage on a building or take out a technical or, pop a Wolverine or that kind of stuff. Thoughts on this unit?
I'm finding a hard reason to ever switch to the Nemesis minigun. Even with the focus.
I agree. I agree.
Even with the
I
focus.
don't think I would ever do it on purpose.
Right. I'd have to play with it. I'd have to play with it to figure out if it's worth. Because I mean, when we're looking at things like forests and stuff like that, like it may have an use. But then I would say I would almost rather it come with the Nemesis minigun and pay extra for the aggression cannon.
I don't disagree with that.
I would never take the miniguns for the same price as the cannon. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be a meta that exists in version 2, at least when it comes to the rule design, that suggests that there's a lot of infantry in the open. And maybe we play this game wrong because there's a lot of like lower energy weapons with high volume of fire that just seem to suggest to me that you're expected to find troops gallivanting around the streets getting ready to get shot at.
Right. No, and obviously, like from the get-go, Dave's put a lot of machine gun fire into a lot of units from the get-go, and they hardly ever get a chance to really shoot it much.
Right.
Like when they crash out of the sky and they're sitting around out in the open.
Right.
Well, I'm hoping that it blows up. I'm not spending the money to switch out to a minigun in my Polecat buggy. In the event
I suppose I should ask if anyone's taking notes here.
So math-wise, 3 shots actually 3 up. 2 are going to hit. And with penetrative, it's a 1 in 6 shot of doing energy 10 up. So 1 in 36 times you're going to do 2 damage to anything on the table up to armor 10. Or math it out the other way, That thing can 1 out of 3 times it shoots at a armor 10. If let's say the baseline of not that there's any math, since it's more an art, but say the saber is the baseline. Every 1 out of 3 times that this polecat is shooting at a saber, it's going to kill it.
What is the battlefield role of the polecat? Not stat wise, but what is it? What is it supposed to be doing?
It comes in off of a raven or
Vulture dropships.
or vulture.
It could come in. Well, no, it would need 2 vulture or need two ravens. Yeah, it looks like it would come in off a vulture.
It looks like it's a very cheap choice to just bring in as a standard, like to fill the standard role.
It can also come in on a raven.
Right, but it has to come in groups of 2 to 4. So it would have to come in a pair of ravens or at least 1 vulture. So and vulture dropships are something we have to discuss still. But
so the vulture can carry 4, or the raven can carry 2.
1 raven can carry 2?
Yes.
Oh.
So to answer your question, Carol, this seems to be overstepping what the Wolverines essentially were.
Yeah. So,
but it's also a standard choice, so it's not even overstepping them as a scout choice.
Yeah. I guess.
So to me, it seems like it fills the role of what a cavalry scout would be on the battlefield, which is harassment and interdiction, and basically covering your flanks.
I agree. It does not read as a standard choice. Do we think moving it to scout?
So
no. Scout is already overly crowded, and leaving this in core, or I'm sorry, standard, gives players the ability to create a more fast, like a cavalry scout type force where everything is lighter and a buggy, and I think that's a cool concept.
Okay.
So it's what, 75 points? Or
you're looking at 50 to 100 points to field a squad of them before transport tax.
Well, I was saying with transport, because it's what the Raven's probably like 25 points or something.
That's a great question. That Raven, I think, is actually only 15.
Is it?
15.
Yeah, 15, yeah.
So 60, 65 points just to fill up your standard force org chart.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
The one other thing that I want to mention is reducing the number of shots on the aggressor cannon to 2. Just in the past, Dave's been more in line with aligning number of shots to number of cannons, and that seems appropriate here because 3 shots is a lot.
Do we agree on reducing the aggressor to 2?
So function-wise, how does it differentiate from, if we're looking at the Wolverine, I know it's scout versus main unit, but the Wolverine is 1 shot, accuracy 3, energy 8, penetration. So,
or it's got an AA gun, or it's got a flamethrower. Wolverine has a lot of variety. Plus, it's a scout, so it spots the Kodiaks.
Correct. But they're all.
I think that
they're all. Essentially, it's the same chassis, and we have 5 different. Yes, it's filling different slots, but they're essentially the same chassis, and either one can only have 1 weapon, and it's essentially, if we're going off, it's the same chassis. It's 5 different weapon choices. Now
I believe Polecats are bigger.
They're bigger, yeah. That their armor is better by 1 too.
Well, transport size-wise, they are not. They are the same. Like how many can be held in something, the space they take up.
I see what you're saying. Not like physical size of the model, but like actual.
Correct.
All right, yeah.
I think you bring up a good point.
And there's not a lot of, because of what else is on the table, like averaging out, like armor 11 versus armor 12, or armor, if we're going back, armor 6 versus armor 7. I guess there is kind of a significant jump there because it makes it can it get killed by your baseline AA guns that a lot of other guns have, or can it not?
Yeah, I will say right away we should change the transport to a B2, not a B1. That should fill up a whole Raven.
Well, that's only going to allow Vulture to bring 2 on.
That's fine.
You have not looked at the Vulture dropship.
Well, I think the more important thing to look at is if you're spending 100 points on polecats, how much damage are they doing against an armor 10 target versus 100 points of saber? I think the polecats come ahead.
100 points of sabers is getting you 3 sabers, so you're getting 3 shots, accuracy 2, energy 10.
Right.
Versus at this point, 12 shots, accuracy 3, energy 7 with shape charge.
You know
I think what Josh is saying is this is not replacing the saber, so essentially the aggressor cannon kind of serves not much purpose.
Well, actually, I'm thinking, I'm spitballing the math, but isn't the polecat ahead in damage?
Well, if you're firing 12 shots, you're going to hit with 8, which means you're gonna shape charge at least 1, maybe 2 shots.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I don't think math wise that it outstrips the saber, because at accuracy 2 you're gonna hit with 2 of your 3 shots and at energy 10. I guess the question is what's the target? I think if you're fighting something like Scourge, I think the polecat has a huge advantage because that volume of fire is going to help with skimmer bonus, because the energy is, I think, high enough still to threaten Scourge armor or Shaltari armor.
So say we move it to Raven can only carry 1. It's going to be
that'll mess up Dave's design
versus sabers. We can argue this both ways. This is basically mathing out transport tax, lining it up versus a saber. I do think math-wise it is actually more reliable, but it dies faster. But math-wise, point for point, I think it actually is more efficient anti-tank than the saber.
Well, at 25 points on top,
so you're going to have
that thing sitting at 25 points.
So remember, this thing also has only 18-inch range, and we can mess with the move and fire stat for the aggressor cannon. So one option is to make this thing fast, but it has to stand still to shoot, or be very slow to shoot. And the other thing is the saber has I'm only looking at countered, right? Countered is 24, and this thing is 18. So this thing has to be closer to the enemy.
So I was actually
9-inch move. What's its move fire?
It's currently slashed.
9.
Got that in place.
So yeah, it can move and fire. It can move its full distance and fire.
So it technically has a farther range.
If you make it a B2 transport, a Vulture is going to bring in 2 of them, and that's going to be 25 points for that Vulture. So that's going to bring you to 75 points to bring on 2, versus you're looking at 99 plus 30, so 223 to bring on 3 sabers. Or 123, I'm sorry, math's hard.
Yeah, but the Vulture dropship also has an AA battery on it, so
it has the option for an AA battery.
Right, but the transport itself is pretty good. Kiro, question. With the polecat buggy, the range of this is 18, which is the same as a light tank. How are you feeling about the range of this polecat buggy versus the light tank?
I really don't want to go any shorter than 18, and I've always felt that the Katana's gun was kind of short-ranged. But if they're both 18, I mean, it's whatever. They're both kind of kinetic weapons, or they're both chemical cannons, essentially. Nothing railgun, nothing fancy. So if they share common range, it makes sense that countermeasures would pick them up at the same time. And yeah. The only thing that I would do is the range full for this thing, I would extend out to like 36 or something.
Yeah, it is at 18 for both, so that makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah,
give me
and
a second
then
to
for-
document. Okay, so Polka. First off, we want to make the twin nemesis standard and the aggressor an upgrade.
Yeah.
How much of an upgrade is the aggressor? 5 points.
We can start at 5. Yeah, let's see how that bumps it to a 30-point unit. Or do we want to go 20 points?
That's going to make it 60, 85 points to bring on 2 and a nemesis if we bump it to a B2 transport.
It's a good starting point. But we still have to find this focus on the battlefield too, you know.
Well, I think if it starts with the twin nemesis miniguns and it ignores cover, I mean that's an interesting role to start with for UCM, shooting into buildings.
Well, he doesn't shoot into the buildings. He's still.
They have to be
it's
at the
not like
wall
it's-
for in the target build. For
not
in
a
the
flame.
target.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot.
So it shoots at things on the building fairly well,
Right.
or well at the on the walls of the building.
Well, let's move on here. Our last standard choice. Actually, let's not move on. Let me recap this. So the Polecat, we're going to switch the Nemesis to the standard. Add the aggressor cannon as a 5-point upgrade. Change the tonnage from B1 to B2. So it needs 2 Ravens to bring a squad on, or 1 Vulture.
Correct.
Are you happy with that?
Range full on the aggressor cannon should be switched to 36.
I don't agree with changing the tonnage, but I think that gets silly because it's modeled one way.
Yeah, it is modeled less. It is not nearly the size of the Jackal, which.
All right. We'll do this the democratic way. Show reduce the size I.
Just increase the points and see where it goes from there.
Okay, so drop the tonnage increase. We are increasing the points +5 to add the aggressor. Is that enough of an increase, Josh?
I think so to start with.
All right. Anybody else object?
Well,
All right.
Yeah, it was just a thought. I didn't really care.
No,
anyway.
okay. You should care, Don. We're trying to suss out. We're going to have to do this like a couple times. All right, on to the Jackal LAV. So we've got Armor 7, Move 9, Active Countermeasures, 3 DP. He's a meaty boy. 50 points to perk him up. He's a standard. Comes in groups of 1 to 4. Standard B2 transports. He has 1 weapon, the Requitor Organ Gun. It's energy 6, shot 6, accuracy 3, range fired and countered of 12. It ignores cover, and it's a tech killer, so you can't shoot it at buildings?
Correct.
So
And infantry, I think.
So
No. It's buildings basically.
So
yeah, you can only shoot it at units.
Yeah.
The rule should be updated to features in general.
Jackal is a newer unit, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
It is a heavy choice.
Yep. I think it is completely stupid.
Yeah, I don't understand the point of this vehicle whatsoever.
So
Okay,
100%. Before we do,
we're all on the same page with this one.
yeah, we gotta change the name of the gun first and foremost. I don't want to shoot anything that's called a fucking organ gun.
So a little history lesson for you. Back in World War II, organ guns were really common on naval vessels. They were an anti-aircraft gun, and they were called an organ gun because they looked like an old church organ.
Look like the pipes.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't cover this. This should be an AA weapon.
You know what? I don't disagree with that. And I'm not looking at the model, but if I remember correctly, when I did look at it, it did have that kind of cool multi-barreled gun that looks like it would just sling flak.
This looks like, but it went away. This looks like probably when if Dave modeled this early enough, not that I'm putting any thoughts or trying to claim any knowledge here, this looks like it would have been a bombard thing.
to me, this looks very similar to a Katyusha or a mobile small diameter rocket system. So instead of barrels,
you
they're
had me
basically
at
rocket
Keisha,
tubes.
So go on.
Well,
So my proposal here is that we turn this into a mobile, but has to remain still indirect fire unit that people can use if they want a more rapid and mobile force that allows them that kind of like barrage or indirect fire capability.
Well, that is a specific word I was looking for out of you. Do we think this is a barrage unit, since it's already slated to be in groups of 1 to 4? You give it something like Barrage 2, it's going to get up to Barrage 8 if you bring a couple vultures full.
I mean, not to go off base, but I mean, I think barrage is something that kind of needed looked at anyway.
Go ahead.
Let's stay away from barrage from now and just leave it at the fact that we all think that it should be some kind of indirect fire platform.
Yeah.
Okay. With that. And I think that actually what we could do, since it's named after what was essentially an anti-aircraft weapon, we could play around with the fact that we started looking at template AA weapons.
Ooh.
Yeah, Josh, you didn't like that?
I'm just thinking the minder swarms going poof.
Coming from the Scourge player, the only guy that has the essentially template AA.
Yeah, templatable flyers.
It would fit a flak AA weapon, ground-based weapon would fit a human faction well. We could come at it, we would drop the shots down to like 3 and raise the accuracy to 4 at least. So that's one route we could go with it.
We could also make this thing have 2 variants with the same model, where one is AA missiles and the other one is indirect fire missiles.
Yeah, I could go that route too. Yeah. It would be a alt. We could also do that. We could put both on it essentially and make it an alt.
Mm-hmm.
We'll put shooting limits on it as one thing we could look at.
I think that's a better route to go than whatever hell this vehicle is supposed to be.
Okay, well, let's start. First off, Jordan, did you just try to tell me that the Jackal light armored vehicle is listed as a heavy in version 2?
Yes.
The light armored vehicle is a heavy.
It's got 3 DP.
Well, a battle bus has 4 DP.
Well, I mean, the battle bus is just, sexy.
If this thing is going to fulfill an AA and indirect fire role, it should go into support.
I do not disagree with that statement.
Yeah. It's not a standard.
So, well, according to Jordan, it's not a standard, it's a heavy, and I might have typoed. Okay, so Jackal is going to become support. We're happy with the armor, the move, the DP, the 50 points as a base cost.
Yeah, we'll start there. I think it's going to have to be a little more expensive than that, but
yeah,
more
once
expensive
we
as
figure
an
out,
AA, more expensive as an IF.
Well, having 2 weapon profiles.
Well, say you make the default the indirect fire version, and then you make the AA version an upgrade.
Well, I think the cannon itself wouldn't change. It would be the munition. So it would be all fire. It would be both, but all fire.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can say that, but then I think you start to look at the plausibility of how many missiles that thing can store in it.
That's why I'm saying limited shots too. It would be like limited 2 or limited, because you're going to have 4 of them.
Anytime that you start having to keep track of limited shots on something that could be,
in
multiple units on the table.
Yeah.
Multiple units and multiple squads and multiple units. That's more things you have to track. So we're going to keep limited weapons limited.
Well, I don't think that we should also do these in groups of 4 either. I think that should be a group size of 1 to 2.
I think they should be in groups of 1 to 2.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Okay. Give me 1 sec here to make a note.
I don't see. I mean, we'd want them to essentially not be in more than like one group of these on the ground. So we don't want to make them so awesome that people are putting in multiple squads.
I mean, depending on where that lands, I could see taking like 2 units of support. Like, what if this is not your freaking rapiers?
So what energy? What energy? Indirect fire.
Those we could, yeah. Well, I guess we can go down that route. What's the? Well, let's not make the howitzers obsolete. So let's look at theirs.
Howitzers are 24, which I think should be longer, but that's just me.
I don't disagree with that, especially because they're immobile.
Yeah, the energy of it.
Yep.
Where's the energy of the howitzer?
Energy
10.
8.
Energy 10 for the main. Yeah.
When we start talking about the howitzer, I'm going to need a few minutes because I used to
I mean, that thing just needs changed all around.
Yep. So anyway, the Jackal is now a platform that provides mobile, AA, and indirect for a fast force. It is now in groups of 1 to 2 instead of 1 to 4, and we need to come up with the weapon profiles. I think move and fire for both should be 0.
Fine, yeah. It's got move 9, so it can get around even if it doesn't move 1 round.
Yep. Yeah, it should be front for both.
You don't think the can the turret not, I don't have the model up. Can the turret not rotate?
I'm looking at it, and it's not a turret. It's just a
it pops up.
Yeah.
It's a pod that lifts, and that's it.
Arc front. Okay.
Then let's talking about indirect fire. Range full, I'm fine giving it 36 inches. 36 inches.
Going to be much further up the board than the howitzer.
That's its range fire, Don. So that's not going to hit units.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Like
All right, I got you.
Range counter.
18.
18 sounds good. It's far enough away that you're not right up on the enemy.
Yeah.
But you're still forcing to make that push up the table.
It'll stay behind a block of buildings and then shoot AA at whatever comes around the corner.
So what are we thinking then? Energy.
Howitzer's 10, so it's got to be less than that.
We're thinking like energy 8, and do we want to give it barrage and multi shots?
No.
No.
No. So we could do something like energy 6 or 7 and blast. Are we going to be small, medium, and large blasts, or are we sticking with one template?
We have all 3 templates. No, all 3 templates.
So if we did like energy 6 or 7 and a small blast, I think that could be good.
It'd be extremely good against
technical swarms.
Technicals. Like
so
maybe
energy 6 and area small.
Yeah.
Energy 6, area small. Yeah.
Are we talking more than 1 shot or multi shots?
I think 1.
Yeah.
So the blast template is what represents the multiple shots, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We need an accuracy.
3 up is fine with me.
What's either 3 up or 4 up? I'm leaning towards
howitzers or
well, indirect fire, which means if it doesn't have line of sight, you're looking at 5 ups. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think 3 up is solid.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at range fire 36, range counter 18, indirect fire, energy 6, area small, 1 shot, accuracy 3+.
Yeah, we start there.
Now, do we just call that gun the Requitter, like Requitter light artillery?
No. Call it. Let's call it 50 millimeter rocket pod. We can always go back and like fluff the names up later, but that
Okay.
seems like.
And then what do we
work
want to call
as
the
a starting
AA
point.
variant then? Or do we stick with the 50 millimeter rocket pod for AA as well?
Yeah.
Call it the same thing, but then call it wide or something.
Or
Are we doing it as an alt or are we doing it as an upgrade?
Alt.
Oh,
I mean, if you make the vehicle 60 points or whatever, now that it does AA, yay.
Okay. So range fire on the AA.
12 at best.
Yeah.
Not range counter, range fire.
Full, sorry. Full is going to be 24.
24,
Counter
and range
12.
countered is 12.
All right,
Are there
AA.
any flying ships that have?
Do we want to stick it at energy 6? Leave it at energy 6. That's pretty solid for AA. That's the same as.
Mm-hmm.
And that's less than
I
a
would say
rapier,
make
but
it
more
make
than.
it. Yep,
Well, if it's gonna
I would
be a
say
thing-
make it 2 shots, energy 6, accuracy 3 or 4 up.
4 up.
So it's not going to be a template AA. It's just going to be one target.
No,
Do
so
we
that,
allow
like the
this
2
to be
shots
reaction
kind of.
fire since it's stuck arc front?
Nope.
If it's not going to reaction fire, then I say we go accuracy 3.
It can't. What do you
compensate
mean?
for it.
Why can't it reaction fire?
Yeah, why is it not reaction firing?
Because reaction fire requires you to be able to track a target. This thing has to lift its gun and fire straight.
I mean, they could be like smart missiles.
In the front arc. Anywhere in the front arc.
I mean,
They could still track
Whatever.
the target, and it could only take a
Yeah.
shot if it comes into the front arc.
yeah, whatever. Make it 4 up, and then make it reaction fireable.
All right. Range
But-
fire
but the thing
24, counter 12, AA, energy 6, shot 2, accuracy 4.
Because the range, it's going to be a 6 for reaction fire, so that kind of makes up for its
I mean,
lack of mobility.
if we're thinking kind of the speed of which a turret's going to spin versus the way the wheels are on that thing, the
Yeah.
speed at which it could turn. I mean, you're splitting hairs on saying it couldn't spin to change its arc of fire.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm hitting on a 6+, I'm seriously considering not reaction firing with it anyways.
Mhm.
So.
All right. Well, we are creeping into 48 minutes here. Next on the list would be our standard troop types.
Wait.
Flak- But
Do we not go through the rest of the heavies?
The
no.
only
So
reason we
this,
started into
this
the
was,
jacket is because he had it listed as a standard.
I had it flagged as a standard. Yeah.
We're not going
Okay.
to touch on the flail.
So
Is the
I had
flail
this flagged as
standard?
no, the flail is a heavy. I had
No,
this
flail
flagged
is
as a
heavy.
standard, which is why we were looking at it right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know we were going
I-
by categories first.
Yeah, I was
So
just thinking
the next thing-
we're just going through standards right now.
as far as standard, the one other thought that I had is potentially making the Gladius heavy tank standard to give players a option to make a heavier battle force. And I was looking at thoughts on that.
What does that do to the scimitar?
Oh, I think that goes
So this-
more
I would-
into if we could have multiple themed lists. Like
Yeah.
3 different army lists for each faction of
Mhm.
different ways to play.
Okay, so it stays as heavy. If Gladius,
I don't know how the Jackal got
W-
listed
were to
as heavy
become-
in the first place. It blows my mind.
yeah. So if the Gladius was a core choice, then the Scimitar, because of its role in the battlefield, would stay as a heavy choice in my mind. But we're leaving both as heavy. Let's move on. We're already at a long time.
Yeah, we may have to split this into a couple of conversations. So that brings us on to troops. listen, Legionnaires are Legionnaires. They die in droves, but they get the job done. I don't know that the Legionnaires really need any tweaking. They felt pretty solid the time I played them. They felt pretty solid playing against them. Don, okay. Let's move.
They are the baseline.
Yep. Let's move on to the flak team. We're still looking at 35 points of base.
Flak team is or exotic.
Flak team is troops.
Black team only.
I think they should be in support.
Or they're actually well V2. They're exotic.
We're not looking at V2, brother.
Okay.
we're looking at beta. I
think they fill a support role because they're an AA unit.
I don't disagree. I think they were made troops because support is a crowded category. And because they're troops.
Well, what else? What is exotic?
Well, they can go into a building too. I guess that was another reason why they were made troops.
What is what's exotic for the UCM in beta?
Praetorians, hazard suits,
and
snipers.
Praetorians and hazard suits. Snipers or scouts.
Are they okay? Scout, yeah, I see.
You know, I would almost say that their countered range should be 24 because they're not they're never getting up the table. I feel like they might see just a little bit more play if they could go into just a building 6 inches up the table or so, and then reach out 24 inches.
They're a mixed bag because you have to bring them. You have to bring them in a bear.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can only bring 2 bases of them. And then they're sticking themselves on the wall the entire game.
So they suffer from what version 1 troops suffered from while bringing bears, and that is no benefit for them to be in a bear, other than they're restricted to it. So in this, from here on there on out, at least standard troops would get the search bonus from being in the bear.
Right, and then the
argue that
you can toss them in a building. The bear can carry the objective off then as well. So
yeah, I don't argue that they shouldn't be in a bear. I'm just saying
no, they're lugging a shit ton of equipment with them.
That's why they're not very well used.
Josh, you proposed bumping their range. That would give them superior range over a saber, but they're still a lower energy, and I don't know that is a terrible choice. That would give you 6. If you brought in a squad of flak troops, if you brought in a 2 stands of flak troopers and tossed them in a backboard building, that would give you an okay AA bubble with 6 shots at energy 3. If you bumped them to range 24, that would be a decent bubble.
It would be kind of fun.
They're going to get the shit shot out of them.
Is Kirill question?
Yeah.
With
Sure.
the flak team and the mortar team, would it be out of the question that these teams would utilize their bear somehow and I don't know, they're attached to the roof of it or something like that? The unit that, because once the bear drops them off, they essentially do nothing. I used them as cover for the mortar squad.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if there's any way that they would, a team like this going out in a bear would not incorporate their transport better for their use than just as an Uber.
So, real world here, there's 3 types of mortars: light, medium, and heavy. Heavy mortars are I equate the mortar team to, and I'm sorry, we're talking about flat cannons, but the mortar team typically, to me, sings out medium mortar, which is infantry carried. It's typically not fired off of a vehicle. If a vehicle is going to fire a mortar, it's already integrated into it because there's so much recoil and there's ammunition storage considerations that it's an actual mortar vehicle, so to speak. So it's its own entity. And for flak, we haven't had in the army anything resembling this, like a man portable flak AA weapon since, I don't know, like World War II, Bofors. I don't know. We have things called man pads, man portable air defense, and they're typically rockets, guided missiles. We don't have anything like this, so I don't have any real world analogies to give you.
And even if you were comparing it to like a World War II weapons team, this would be like a 20 mil getting pushed around.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like a crew of a 50 cal, because 50 cals were originally like fantastic AA guns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not their original role, but like they turn out to be fantastic AA guns. And I mean, it's in a world of guided weapons, the choice to make a flak high volume of fire cannon to target aircraft did not make sense to me when it came out. So I'm very biased against this.
I think, like if you throw in stuff like the Scourge minders and monitors, like I can see that like being a reasonable response to all these loitering Scourge lightly armed things floating about.
The fluff implication is that pretty much all units possess some form of active countermeasures that disrupt guided weaponry, which is why everything kind of reverts back to this idea of, don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes.
Yep.
Because even long range weapons in Dropzone isn't long range when you stop and think about the scale of the game.
So
no, I get that. So like,
the other thing to think of here too is, what about them versus the sniper teams? They're Praetorian snipers because they're both infantry AA units.
Praetorian snipers shoot air?
Praetorian snipers have a one-shot AA, and it's a weapon I'm using if I'm not using them to do something far more important. Snipers are a great scout unit. They have infiltrate. They are really good at slaughtering other infantry if they're brave enough to go to the walls, and they can harass light armor vehicles or aircraft if they need to. I don't know that.
They will snipe. Now it's not as many shots, but it's small arms 7 that it gets to use its full range.
Yeah, which is 18, I believe.
Yeah, it gets 18-inch small arms 7. So,
right. So one squad gives you 2 shots. Now, granted, you need to snipe that important Raven that happens to be within 18 inches. It's fantastic. But if we bump the flak team to 24 inches and put them in a building with 6 shots at energy 6, I don't know that it's a comparison as far as an AA unit goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, 12 shots because you have to take, 2 bases of them?
Well, each base, I believe, is shot 3.
Oh.
Yeah, 3 shots.
Right. I mean, you can up it to 24, but I agree with Kiro. I mean, reasoning's different, but I think it's a dead unit kind of for the faction.
It is a weird unit, and maybe the look at them should be less about a flak team and more as a weapon support team.
Well, it comes down to
something that Joel brought up is the idea of including like a base of mortars or a base of the flak team in a legionnaire unit. So like attaching one of them somehow.
Yeah,
and I mean that gets away from like what we're trying to do right now, but that's something that's to consider in the future. So if we consider this just as a machine gun squad, right? I think they could, with the capability to fire AA as well, I think they could have a pretty interesting purpose of taking out things up to technical size and maybe slightly more.
Right, but their problem is their movement. So they have to come in on the bears, on the condors.
I don't know
put
if
them
that's
in-
a problem though. Bears are
If you leave them in the open, then they're gonna get shot to shit. So the survivability means they have to go into buildings if they need to go. If they want to come out of the backfield, it'll go quick. So yeah, unless they're sitting in the backfield behind the bears as some sort of cover, sitting them in the open to get them in range of a lot of those.
But that's a core flaw of how the game is played, where everybody plays with just the buildings and nobody puts out scatter terrain. Nobody puts out, anything that breaks up line of sight or offers cover. Be offended all you want.
I
will offend some more.
Scatter terrain that goes on my table.
Right.
Well, I made a bunch as well for my table for that exact reason. But when you look at most tournament setups,
no, you're right. I agree. I think a lot of the problems with this game comes down to A, people not playing different missions, and B, not varying the terrain. It makes a huge difference to the game. I think that was part of the barricade rules were added. So, anyways,
I think
we agree.
So we're spending a lot of time on this. I think we should take a pause and move to the next unit, because there's too much going on with this unit to solve right now, and we're already running up on a time limit. So in order to be more productive, I think it would make sense to move on to the next thing, discuss internally a little bit more back and forth in our Discord chat of what we think this can do, and then the next time that we meet all together, kind of revisit this unit.
I gotta tell you, I don't know if we're gonna get much done here, because the next one is Legionnaire Mortar Team.
I think they're actually fine.
So let's see.
What?
I think they're fine.
Well, I heard you. I thought Kirill was starting to say something. Then
let's see, Mortar Team. All right. I think we should get rid of the concussion round. Sorry, I'm looking at the TT combat page. Okay.
The concussion round pushes infantry off the wall.
I mean, that would be
an each year round.
The concussion would be huge, because infantry went to the walls, or at least Scourge infantry went to the walls all the time in the beta. So
the last game I played, I had a shit ton of occupation veterans core my behemoth with their OP'd plasma cannons.
Okay. In that case, I'll figure out how to rename it to be cooler than just concussion round, that are a little bit more accurate.
Features hit by this position, all infantry are pushed back inside, and no infantry can go to the wall or edge. That feature for the remainder of the turn. Okay, so you want to shell the building before they go to the wall if you want to keep them from coming out.
I mean, and you can just keep shelling them, but but in reality, a bunch of high explosive rounds are going to keep people from going to the wall. But that's beside the point. Well, the other thing that reality, mortars,
machine gun on most vehicles would stop units from going to the wall.
Yeah. Mortars typically also carry smoke rounds, so I don't know if we want mortars to have a smoke ability like the howitzer.
Well, and smart smoke,
but shorter range,
exists on a couple of different units, so it would be a huge issue to add it to them.
Mm-hmm.
No. And at 35 points a base with transport tax, I don't think we would even have to really mess with their points that much.
Mm-hmm. And then illumination isn't a thing in this game, so that's fine. Incendiary round, I think, works. So high explosive, concussion, incendiary, and smoke makes this a well-rounded unit.
I think I agree with Don. I think they're fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to add smoke to it, that's fine. We'd figure out a way to incorporate it. The whole faction has a lot of smoke, so it doesn't make sense they would get it too.
Or maybe it doesn't make sense that some of the shit that has it.
I think the light tanks don't need it. I think that's a weird one, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Maybe pull it off the katana and add it to the mortar team.
Yeah.
Honestly, with those weapon profiles, I probably wouldn't ever fire smoke rounds unless I had nothing else to shoot.
They get
But if it
good
was
cover.
bolt action, goddammit, you'd fire smoke all over the place. It didn't land where you wanted it to.
Yeah, the smoke is actually really good. It's just currently positioned on units I'd rather shoot other stuff with. I would consider it with these guys though.
Okay, so we'll add smoke we'll add smoke to the mortar team and consider pulling it off the katana. I mean, we'll leave it on the katana for now. It doesn't have to come off right now, but if we find that there's too much smoke everywhere, then so that wraps up standard infantry, unless there is something new I don't know about.
No.
Which I don't believe there is. So that would lead us into command units. Do we want to try to tackle command, or do we want to schedule another meetup to look into those?
Well, I think the Super Phoenix was always the premier standout, right?
I don't know. I think the Kodiak personally is my default choice for a UCM commander. They do have the Wolf now, which is a version 2 unit that we have to convert back. And then you've got the Phoenix and the Super Phoenix. I think the Kodiak is sound. Don and I both fielded it with mixed success. One-shot syndrome really kind of took over.
The Super Phoenix was only ever a question to the famous commander version. It was a way to reutilize that model so somebody would actually buy it and use it. If that model no longer exists, then we don't need the Super Phoenix.
It does not look like it exists any longer. It is not a list builder.
It's an option we could just strike from the game then.
Okay. Well,
it's sitting there it has weapon profiles for that model, and if those don't physically exist on the model anymore, then they don't need to be there.
Let's hold up there. Kodiak, good. Yes, we're happy with the way the Kodiak looks, sounds, and performs.
Yeah, I'm always happy with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Kodiak does not. Yeah.
I remember we talked about making it move and fire for the tactical orbital strike. I don't remember what the conclusion of that conversation was.
We did discuss that. We discussed whether or not we could add move and fire to the orbital strike.
Yeah, I think we agreed that it's so cheap that it's okay to bring the Condor in.
It is already functionally probably the best commander choice as it is.
Well, I think it's only got a move of 4. So it's only got a move 4. Does giving it move fire 4 really break it in any way, shape, or form, or does it just make it slightly more utilitarian to be able to say, I can get my ass out of here?
Because like move fire like 1 or...
Because it's an area weapon, it does and it's infinite range, and it's indirect, it does actually give it another extra turn of shooting. So merely changing that is actually pretty big. Yeah, not saying it should or shouldn't, but...
Right. Giving it move fire 1 means it can drive on turn 2 and shoot. Instead of having to pay for the Condor.
I mean, is that the concern? Well, giving it move fire or anything means that it can come on turn 1 in the Condor and shoot.
I don't think you can.
No, you can't drive area on 1.
What?
I don't think you can't drop and shoot with indirect fire.
I believe you can.
Can you?
You can drop and shoot with AA. You just can't shoot aircraft with AA. And I thought that was the only.
Yeah, the only issue you're looking at is you're getting a +2 modifier for drop and shoot with it.
So the reason
if you're firing blindly indirect, you're looking at +2, and if you drop and shoot, you're looking at +2.
Right.
So that means your round 1 shooting would be at 6.
The reason you can't drop and shoot with any indirect fire weapon is because all indirect fire weapons were move fire 0 or move. Yeah, the move and fire stat. You couldn't if you move more than 0, which by rule, if you deployed,
you move more than 0.
You move more.
All right, fine.
Okay, yeah, keep it at 0. That makes sense.
Well, as I say, the flip side of that is you're also talking about a command unit that you're paying for 105, potentially 135 points for before command cost that only gets to shoot,
turn 3 on.
Yeah.
Well, that's the choice you're going to make. Do you want to pay for the condor, or do you want to be able to shoot?
Well, I pay for the condor
or
because I'm not a douche like that.
right.
Okay.
The conversation came up because I was being whiny that I wasn't able to shoot sooner because I did not plan ahead.
I didn't call you whiny. I respectfully listened to your concern, unlike you with my army. I mean, no,
I was calling myself whiny about it. I was calling myself out.
It is not an argument to say that it's already the most survived because of where it can sit and how it can sneak on point for point. Like it's extremely survivable for
hey, listen, I discovered that a Hera was extremely survivable if I parked it on the other side of a building from a Napoleon too. So
it really should drop its armor. Well, Kodiaks and Bears really should drop their armor because there's no way that a command unit would have armor equivalent to light tank.
Man, you don't know the UCM value their commanders.
I mean, for as awesome as a shot, it can be armor 5 for all I care.
Yeah, it's back corner board.
So drop it to 8, and I don't give a shit.
I mean, a Ferrum is only armor 7.
Yeah, I can go down.
Let's go to armor 8.
Well, then the only other thing to discuss is the Phoenix. Does it get the self-repair rule that came up in V2?
No.
No, that's dumb.
I don't believe that rule is listed. That rule is not listed in beta.
Well, that's the, I think, only difference between what's in beta right now and.
I do, however, love the advanced command suite rule we added to the Super Phoenix. And since it has essentially the same mobile dish on top of it, I wouldn't mind incorporating that into the Phoenix, the standard Phoenix.
Increases the command value to 48 inches. That's impressive. Do we add that to the regular Phoenix and not increase its 109? It's pretty steep point wise.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a group decision. I like it, and I think it's a cool, and then that model has the function of it. So,
I mean, I think that's fine. Nobody uses the UCM deck anyways.
Yeah, that's true. I do notice so that we do that on the Kodiak too. The Kodiak has the Tactical Operations Center that increases your CV by 1, and then the Phoenix has increases your command radius to 48.
Be a good thing.
None of the other factions are getting that kind of love on their command units, so we might want to consider. I'm not saying I don't like it. I do like the fact that the command units do something to make the unit more.
Let that be the UCM thing
than just a fancy hat, but whatever. But I do think it might be nice to look at the other factions and be like, hey, maybe that command unit should do something else or get a bonus of some kind.
It kind of is part of the balance of the Kodiak because there's nothing in that radius other than the UCM. Is it not as hard to get good scouts on the board?
Fucking Praetorian snipers are like some of the best scouts in the game, and Wolverines aren't exactly bad, especially since you can bring them on as AA, AT, or Flame.
I mean, the snipers were pretty much pretty close to auto take most lists. They would have to go to the wall, but yeah, you still. I don't feel like the Kodiak.
They go to the wall, but they go to the wall backboard and with dispersed formation.
I don't know that well, maybe. Like, was the Kodiak really that punished by command radius?
Yeah, for me it was. Before the Phoenix came out, and I mean, I don't have the Phoenix, I always use the Kodiak. It makes it so that majority of my cards are useless unless I have scouts.
Well, and I guess
UCM cards always suck anyway, so I never use them. But
function wide too. On the flip side, the Phoenix is going to be mid board up in the gut of it. It doesn't make sense for those special abilities to be flip flop more so.
No, because you need to take advantage. If you really want to take advantage of the scouts for the indirect fire, so it kind of goes hand in hand. So your cards and your indirect fire both
Right.
benefit from
There's
scouts.
But the
there's a
extra
synergy
range,
between that unit and scouts.
the extra range on the Phoenix is fairly.
I mean, we can adjust that. That was a very expensive unit. It was attached to, so I could.
There was a
drop it.
220 point unit.
No,
It's
I'm
more
saying
like
it
a 190 point unit now.
it doesn't even really add a ton. Like if let's assume your Phoenix is in the center board and you have a CV3, you got a 12-inch radius around it, so it can get to half the board anyway.
No, but it's a backfield benefit or whatever. It's not that it's meant to be like the end all be all. It was just a little something to make it stand out.
The other thing is, in real life, that would be a radar used for battle tracking and helping targeting. So if we wanted to revisit or rethink or reconfigure the rule entirely, maybe it gives some kind of to hit bonus to units around it within command range, or double
Scourge,
command range, or
Scourge has their like buff from the Overseer, so I think that would be like stepping on the toes of that. But I see what you're saying, though.
Well, we seem to act like factions can't have like abilities that other factions have.
Well, I think that is
As a Scourge player, no.
I would say that's more
as
of a
Scourge
card.
player, literally all your faction abilities come from stealing other factions' people. But
Yeah, I would say that's more of a card issue, Kirill. Like, I think that if we had cards that did those roles, and then this being
okay,
an
cool.
enhancement to other people, yeah.
one of the things I pointed out that I had forgotten about was that the beta rules included a rule about tailoring your deck down to 40 cards.
Yes.
Which made me go cool because we discussed that on Saturday when we played.
I think we actually like incorporated that into a couple of the tournaments that were run.
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember conversations about it, and I mean, let's be honest. It's been a solid 3 years since we really tore into looking at any of the stuff that we ever previously worked on, or especially now tearing into kind of rebuilding this whole thing from the ground up. But I think that might help UCM.
Well, we could also, since we're re-looking at all this, we could do like each commander has 2 special cards connected to it that you could only incorporate while using that commander.
That could be fun.
The other thing that you can do with the radar dish is you can allow it to look at enemy command cards to some degree. You can allow it to play with your command card deck, as in like you can draw an extra card, but you have to discard it. You could
use
do
it
things
to
like
disrupt the other commander's sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your Phoenix is within so much range of the opponent's SOI, it would reduce it by X number of inches for comms.
You could also make the radar dish, since it is pointed in the sky, give a bonus to interception for AA units, since it improves their tracking. And that would be something really unique.
Yeah, I think it should have like a minor support role, and then we can look at like maybe the card option.
Ooh, it could buff fast movers.
That would fit in with the air cav
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing they have. So yeah, there's definitely like tons of options we can come up with.
Yeah, there's tons of fun we could have with that.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to point out, the Kodiak is actually 125 points in V2 compared to the beta, but I don't see a need to up the Kodiak's points.
So if you're looking more at the extra command point value with it, well, it's kind of like, oh, whatever, because you can't use your cards as much. What in any of the games is really more important about your CV value? Is it your cards, or was it more about
Initiative.
initiative?
Yeah.
To me,
For
it always
me, it was always initiative.
initiative in every single game I ever played. Like the cards were always so luck based that um, the value of the commander, no matter where it's at, like is in the initiative bonus.
I know I had proposed in the past, and it was, I don't know if it was scoffed at or shot down or what, but I really liked what Gates of Antares did with allowing you to purchase abilities with your list building to get, you could purchase, a couple of rerolls or a couple of special abilities that you could trigger in the game and at a time of need. And I almost wonder if abandoning command cards and making command value linked to the number of abilities that you can add on, or the number of abilities that you're allowed to pick for that commander, might not be a better choice. And then just discard the whole idea of a deck at all.
Without getting too deep into that, though, my point is the Kodiak is essentially 50 points cheaper than it really is because of the command value bonus.
This year's at like 30.
Well, I guess it depends on which chart we're using.
Well, you're using the beta chart because that's our starting area. Also, I'm not sure. I think the idea of the command values being different for factions wasn't necessarily bad, and I think that was related more to fluff than anything. Like PHR had cheaper commanders, but that's because units were better trained in the PHR. So versus like the UCM where Legionnaires are rushed through training and thrown into a meat grinder, Immortals were put through highly specialized training and augmentation.
So,
and that boiled down to having not just better commanders, but better, NCOs and down the line. So it was cheaper to buy a level 4 commander for your PHR than it was to buy a level 4 commander for your UCM.
So we had it at 30 points per level. Except for CV2 was 35, and then every level was 30 above.
This is a rabbit hole. We've got one more commander to cover.
All right, let's get through
that. That is the Wolf Command LAV, which was the version 2 starter box commander that they added. She's armor 7, move 9, active countermeasures with 3 DP, running at 60 points. Only one of them fits on a Triton, or fits on a Raven. Weapon systems: it has an armor-piercing missile, energy 10, shot 1, accuracy 3, range fire 24, range counter 12, front arc, Devastator 2, and it has an alt fire mode, which allows it to fire a flak missile at E6, 3 shots, accuracy 2, ranged fire and counter of 18, front arc. What do we think of the Wolf?
I think the fact that this is a command unit is really silly. It looks more like an alternate version of what's the other unit that we just talked about? The one that was heavy, the Jackal, where
Dingo.
Yeah. So basically, based off what the model looks like, WYSIWYG, it should have some kind of fancy guided missile, and it should be, I don't know, capable of taking out something really, really nasty, maybe.
Well, it's got Alt 1 Devastator, right? Or it's got Devastator too.
Alt 1 is the flak missile, and it's got Devastator 2 on that missile, so it's 2 to 4 damage.
Does it really need AA? I guess is the.
Yeah, I think so.
If we're giving it to the other thing, why not?
I don't mind it as a command unit. As a light armored command unit, it gives it a little flexibility. I don't hate it. I don't see a lot of stuff to make me go like, oh God, we need to change that. It doesn't seem. It's a cheap command option for the UCM.
So it's not necessarily game breaking because
it's the kind of commander that is going to come in the starter box and that someone's going to use until they buy a Kodiak or a Phoenix.
yes.
And then the unit will get put aside unless they play a skirmish or do a demo. I don't know that. I mean, I don't know if you guys don't feel the same way. Tell me. I think it's fine.
I think this is a unit that will go the way of the special commander. Like you said, once people start expanding on their faction, then it's probably going to collect dust.
Maybe it'll get used a little more often because it's not necessarily point for what it brings. It's not that expensive to bring, and maybe it'll fill that second command slot a little more.
Oh, that's
often.
true. I guess we don't ever really think about the fact you could have more than one commander.
Yeah,
As a Scourge player, I do.
Well, when I built my last Scourge list, I said, I need an Overseer and an Oppressor. And then I went, God, I can't afford that. Well, gentlemen, that takes us through UCM Command. And the next category is Heavies, but we're coming up on 90 minutes. I think that's a little long for our chat. Do we want to pause here and then we'll get together at a later date here and go back through Heavy Scouts, Exotics, and Transports and support?
Yeah. That's fine.
Jesus Christ, we have a lot of stuff to go through still.
The rest of it we'll go through pretty quickly, though.
I think
we
so.
touched on a lot of the newer stuff this episode, so that's probably why it really dragged it. Plus, there was the whole introduction as to why we're even here. Yeah, we can get into that.
No, we don't want to get into that now because
later. I mean, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I say we should probably wait for alcohol to talk about the dingo. Honestly, as I was going through version 2 units, I mean, there's some stuff I looked at when that's kind of silly or that seems pointed oddly. But I didn't really, at least with UCM, I didn't look at too much other than that dingo and go, oh my God. But that dingo, yeah, the biggest problems I think I saw trying to pull units over was trying to figure out what the faction identity was, like what that unit's what role that unit was filling, and then was it like a stupid special ability? Like the dingo is a stupid special ability. I'm going to start ranting about it, but
yeah, that was only my ever complaint with Dave when he designed stuff, as he seemed like he designed first and then filled in the role later, and there was a lot of overlap in some of his stuff.
Yeah. And I know we've all talked about the possibility it would be cooler if there was something, and Special Commander started to hint at this, like alternative force build charts that said, hey, this is a fast and mobile UCM list, so you're going to run polecats and you're going to run wolverines and wolves, and it's going to be a highly mobile army. But that like never, that was something that never materialized. So
I think the crutch to that was only ever going to be the way that the games are won through the objective system. It really kind of like limited your force organization.
And now there's silence.
Then nobody agrees with that.
No, I'm just processing what you're saying.
Because I was
thinking behemoths.
UCM in particular have an excellent aircraft that, unless you can kill your opponent, it wasn't point effective to carry that many pieces of aircraft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because it's not like you're going to go heavy with Falcons and Eagles and then land them to score objectives, right?
Right, exactly. They're not scoring anything on the ground, and they're not getting anything out of buildings. So
Right. Well, gentlemen, I feel like this was a fun and productive chat. I'll go into the list builder tomorrow and start implementing some of these changes so that we can get them updated. Gordo, you keep starting to say something, and I keep talking over you. What's up?
Super Phoenix is still around. It is the Rock heavy gun ship. It is a heavy now. So the model is actually still there.
is it okay?
Do we want to keep the Super Phoenix as a command choice, or do we want to have the Rock as a heavy choice as suggested by V2?
We can discuss it for another time.
All right. Well, alrighty. Gentlemen, I think we'll wrap this up because we are clearing the 90-minute mark. By the time I add intro and outro music, we'll be well past it. So I was starting to say, I do feel like we had a productive chat tonight.
I agree.
I concur.
Good. Josh, I know this probably felt weird talking about your most hated enemy all night, but I appreciate you joining us.
Hey, that's food, man. That's food.
They love the UCM. What are you talking about?
They just prefer them in a bag to go.
The Scourge faction talk will be super easy because they are perfect.
I think that the PHR chat is going to be awful because I'm like, here's some issues that need addressed, and Don's like, fuck your faction.
Yeah, I'm not in charge anymore, so you can say whatever you want.
All right. Well, gentlemen, any final thoughts before we call it a night here?
No, just thank everybody who's going to listen to this, and we love to hear your opinions.
Yes, you two people, you know who you are. Thank you.
Both of you. Thank you so much. Jordan, any final thoughts?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Josh, any final thoughts?
No, I'm good.
Trill, any final thoughts?
Concrete cannons are dumb.
What was that?
Concrete cannons are dumb.
I'll second that. All right, gang. Thanks for listening. Go ahead and do all the silly liking the stuff and sharing it and letting everybody know we exist again. Also, pop over on YouTube on the Gamer Direct channel. I've got a number of recent streams from our various plays, as well as build and paint videos that I've done for the UCM PHR Behemoth. I'm going to start in on a resistance army. Then I'm going to light it on fire and watch Jordan cry. I'm not going to burn it. It's too much work involved. All right. Until next time.
Resin doesn't melt like plastic.
Oh, we're going to find out.
If you're going to name drop your channel, you should name drop Overlaid Shivox too.
Oh, shit. Josh has a channel too. Yeah, you should check out the Scald channel. Josh, have you posted anything Dropzone related since GordoCon 22?
I have not. I think the last thing was that ASMR stupid thing.
No, you did a couple of live plays from Gordo's house.
Oh yeah.
I know we drank a lot while we were there, so you might not remember having done that, but actually we've recorded 3 podcasts since then, but we've only been able to publish 1. All right, gentlemen. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. You guys have a good night, and thanks for joining me. And we'll do this again soon.
Bye.
Have a good one.
See you.